Penguin Random House Audio presents The Gunfighters, How Texas Made the West Wild, by Bryan Burrough. Read for you by Fred Sanders. For Amy. Prologue. I was raised in a little town called Abilene, Kansas. We had as our marshal for a long time a man named Wild Bill Hickok. Now, that town had a code, and I was raised as a boy to prize that code. It was, meet anyone face to face with whom you disagree. If you met him face to face and took the same risks he did, you could get away with almost anything, as long as the bullet was in the front. President Dwight D. Eisenhower, 1953. Just before 6 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, July 21st, 1865, 3 months after Robert E. Lee surrendered at Appomattox, two men stepped into the square in Springfield, Missouri, a scraggly village of 1,200 toward the state's southwest corner. Alongside loomed the Greene County Courthouse and its pillared Greek Revival facade. Across from it ran a line of storefronts where a crowd was gathering. Rumors of what was about to happen had been spreading all day. The man on the north side of the square was Davis Tutt, an irascible 28 or 29-year-old Confederate soldier turned gambler. In a photograph, Tutt has cat eyes and a goatee. That day, by one account, he wore a long leather duster. By all accounts, he was carrying a pistol, and also, fatefully, a gold pocket watch, a Waltham model. The man facing him on the south side of the square was James Butler Wild Bill Hickok, a 28-year-old Union scout turned gambler. Hickok had weary eyes and a nose so long it almost reached his upper lip. One wag had nicknamed him Duck Bill. He wore his hair long and greasy. That day, by most accounts, Hickok had a Colt Navy revolver in his hand. By all accounts, he wanted his watch back. Apparently, because stories explaining this are all over the map, Hickok had warned Tutt not to cross the square with his watch, which Tutt had snatched up to settle a gambling debt. The backstory of all this, as is common in so many Old West gunfights, remains murky to this day. The two men had apparently been friends. Hickok may or may not have fathered a child by Tutt's sister. They may or may not have quarreled over a woman. Whatever the background, all accounts agree they bickered over the size of a gambling debt during a game of cards at the Lionhouse Hotel earlier that week. Tutt, it said, claimed the debt was $35. Hickok insisted it was $25. Tutt snatched up Hickok's watch to settle the difference. From a distance estimated at 75 yards, Hickok yelled, "Dave, here I am." He then slid his pistol back into its holster. "Don't you come across here with that watch," he added. Everyone, it appears, understood what had to happen. Some versions say the two men turned and stood sideways, cutting their eyes toward the other for a long moment or two. Others say Tutt took a step forward. However it began, they pulled their pistols simultaneously. Tutt shot from the hip. Hickok thrust forward his left forearm, carefully laid his Colt across it, and fired at the same time. Gun smoke rose, then dispersed in the breeze. All around, the townspeople stared. Suddenly, a red stain could be seen spreading across Tutt's chest. "Boys, I'm killed," he shouted. Tutt staggered forward onto the courthouse steps, then lurched back into the street where he fell dead, shot through the heart. As he did, Hickok, unblemished, wheeled around to confront a group of Tutt's pals loitering to one side. "Aren't you satisfied, gentlemen?" he asked coolly. "Put up your shooting irons, or there'll be more dead men here." The men slowly backed away. The Hickok-Tutt face-off, the first Wild West-style gunfight to gain national attention after the Civil War, is often called the first gunfight of the Old West. It wasn't, not by a long shot, but it did herald the onset of a host of strange new phenomena in the western half of the country that soon enthralled the nation. 7 months later, in February 1866, came America's first peacetime bank robbery in Liberty, Missouri, pulled off by former Confederate guerrillas who may have included a teenager named Jesse James. A year after that came the first train robbery outside Seymour, Indiana, staged by a band of toughs called the Reno Gang. That summer, the first of the great post-war cattle drives rumbled up from Texas into Missouri. From these disparate events arose a series of new American myths and archetypes, few as enduring as the Old West gunfighter. This book is a history of what's been called the gunfighter era, the years between Hickok's shootout in 1865 and 1901, when the last of the great Western outlaws, Butch Cassidy and Harry Longabaugh, the Sundance Kid, walked onto a Brooklyn wharf and boarded a steamship to South America. During this period, for the first time, men such as Hickok and Wyatt Earp and Billy the Kid rose to fame on the strength of their prowess killing other Americans, usually with revolvers, which, if you think about it, is more than a little strange. Men shot each other on the streets of Boston and Baltimore every evening, and were dismissed as thugs and criminals. No one remembers them today, and rightly so. But the shootings out west fascinated then and fascinate now, in large part because they became an element of the creation myth a young nation craved, a dream that promised that in America any man could survive and even thrive alone on skills he could learn himself. The frontier, free of Eastern civilization's smothering rules and laws, its strangling political machines and disapproving pulpits, emerged as the ideal venue for the worship of this new American individualism. The Story of the West, a California professor named Thomas K. Whipple wrote in 1943, is our Trojan War, our Volsunga Saga, our Arthurian cycle or Song of Roland. Florid comparisons, to be sure, yet they strike a chord. And at the heart of this American myth stands the hero every legend requires, maybe the purest expression of solitary fortitude, the supreme individualist, the American Achilles, the American Thor, the American Lancelot, a man alone with that great equalizer, a gun. The gunfighter. The men behind the myth, the Hickocks and Earps, would become legends. For decades they crowded to the center of American popular culture, on the page and on the screen. Today, with gun violence a polarizing political issue, their legacy is more challenging. There are those who believe telling their stories amounts to glorifying the kind of violence so many have come to abhor. Love them or hate them, they are undeniably a part of our shared history, our culture, of what America is today. Which raises the question, what exactly was a gunfighter? As it's used here, the term simply refers to anyone in the Old West who took part in one or more notable exchanges of gunfire among civilians, not involving Native Americans or the military. He could come from any walk of life, but was often an officer of the law, such as Pat Garrett or Heck Thomas, an outlaw, like Sam Bass or Joaquin Murrieta, a gambler, like Luke Short or Ben Thompson, a feudist, like the Texans Print Olive and Jack Helm, a cattleman, such as Clay Allison, or that rarest of species, a gun for hire, a la Tom Horn, or the Texas assassin Jim Miller. And what exactly is a notable gunfight, or as I call it, a marquee gunfight? It's one that, for whatever reason, outlandish or unusual circumstances, the notoriety of a participant, or a compelling backstory, seemed important enough to remember. They're the ones that made the newspapers and the history books. And yes, it's true that many didn't. Those gunfights that didn't make a newspaper or book at some point, and one suspects there must be many, are mostly lost to history. There are entire theaters of frontier violence where killings appear to have been commonplace, yet almost certainly were, as they say in modern parlance, underreported. A case in point is the Texas-Mexico border, where lore attributes hundreds of killings to obscure gunmen. Candidly, there's not much an author can do to remedy that. This book isn't intended to be a survey of all Old West gunfights, just the ones we remember most clearly. Though they fought in the 19th century, the fame of men like Earp and Hickok mushroomed during the 20th, thanks to modern media, especially Hollywood films. In fact, Though firearms have been part of American culture's DNA.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?